välkomna tillbaka efter vår andra rast. Jag hoppas att ni hann röra lite på er så att ni är redo för den här sista delen av eventet. När vi nu går in i vår tredje timma faktiskt av det här eventet. Men också vår sista del. Och här kommer jag ju återigen lämna över ordet till Qlik. Och Qlik har förberett en workshop som där de kommer gå igenom Qlik Sense SaaS för er. Och den här presentationen kommer vara på engelska, likt den som vi såg tidigare idag. Tyvärr så kommer ni inte kunna göra det som Lee Kennedy visar under workshopen, då vi inte hade möjlighet att dela en interaktiv länk med er. Men det går jättebra att titta på den här presentationen som en demo och lära sig mycket om verktyget ändå, även fast ni inte kommer kunna interagera och klicka er runt själva. Och videon är ungefär 40 minuter lång. Och därefter så kommer vi egentligen, jag och Unn, summera dagens innehåll och vad vi har pratat om idag. Och även titta närmare på några av de frågor som har kommit in i chatten. Så det är vad vi har kvar här den sista timmen. Men nu tar jag och lämnar över ordet till Qlik.
Hi, and welcome to the Cloud Data and Analytics Tour 2021. My name's Lee Kennedy, and I'm going to be taking you through an introduction to Qlik Sense Enterprise SaaS. This is a walkthrough of some of the key features of Qlik Sense Enterprise SaaS. I'll be covering a number of key themes here. We'll look at the Cloud Hub, which is the central point for Qlik Sense Enterprise SaaS. We'll look at Spaces, which is how you organize content in Qlik Sense Enterprise SaaS. We'll look at how data files and connections are managed in SaaS. We'll look at how you can organize your content with collections and favorites. And finally, we'll look at the insights features of Qlik Sense Enterprise SaaS. This video is recorded from the point of view of a student running through a SaaS workshop. This is based on the workshop we ran at our Qlik World online conference this year, and I'll be assuming the role of a student from now on in the video. Okay, we'll start by opening our emails. You will have received, after you registered for the workshop, an email such as this with an invite and the URL of the tenant. So I'm going to open that URL in a new window. If you haven't already, you'll be redirected to the login page. Log into your tenant with the email that you registered for. You're now presented with the welcome screen. We can see a number of areas in the welcome screen. Up the top we have the menu bar. As we see the Home, Explore and Collections menu. We can see the Launcher menu here. This shows other areas of Qlik Sense Enterprise SaaS we can go to. Next to that, we have our User Profile menu, where we can see our settings. We have the Welcome panel here, which contains a number of useful things to help us learn about SaaS. We can customize our home area here. And finally, down the bottom we have Connect and Learn. This is where we can find information on what's happening in the product, as well as training material. Right. Let's now have a look at a demo app. If we look in the Welcome panel, you'll see here it says Explore the Demo. If we click here, what's happening is a demo app is going to be created in our tenant for us to be able to explore. This will take a few moments to import the app and create it. Once that completes, the app will be opened and we'll be able to have a look at the app. So this is a sample app that we can play around with. We're not going to focus too much on apps in this workshop, but feel free to take your time to look around the app now. When you've finished, to return to the hub, click on the Qlik logo up here and that will open the hub again. Now we're going to have a look at the connect and learn function. In the bottom right hand corner, click on the Q with the number next to it. We can see in here a number of features. We can see what's new in the product, and it'll tell us about things that have been released in Qlik Sense. We can see information on events and webinars that we can attend to learn more about Qlik and Qlik Sense. And we can explore more demos. We're not going to do that now, but if you're interested in your own time, you might want to look through some of these demos. And we can access help and training material in here. Now let's take a look at customizing the hub. Click on the Customize Your Home button below the Welcome tab. There are 3 tabs here: Collections, which we'll cover later, Generated, and Resources. For now, click on the Resources tab. We can see there's a training resource. To add this to our hub environment, click the plus sign. Now click Done. Scroll down, you can now see we've got a training tab with access directly in the hub to training material. Feel free to further customize your hub as you desire. We will use this feature more later. Now we're going to have a look at spaces. There are three types of spaces in Qlik Sense Enterprise SaaS. Personal spaces are your own area where you can develop your content. Shared spaces are similar to a personal space but allow you to collaboratively develop with other people and are quite useful for companies developing in teams. And finally, we have managed spaces. These are governed spaces and do not allow changes to applications except for the reloading of data. Managed applications can be published from either a personal or a shared space. Now, to see spaces, we start by clicking the Explore menu. By default, we see all spaces, which is this menu here. If we click the drop down, we can see what the spaces we have access to. In my case, apart from my personal space, I've been given access to the link space and the workshop managed space. We'll use the content in these spaces throughout the workshop. I can also create my own space. If I click the Add Space button, I'm going to call my space Qlik Student Space because that is my username. It's a good idea to use a name that is unique to you because there's a lot of people doing this workshop and it will be useful to be able to find your space easier if the name is unique to you. Optionally add a description here, I'm not going to do that. Create our space and we're automatically put in that space. As part of the workshop setup materials you will have received, there were instructions to download content for the workshop. If you haven't already done this, you might want to go back to the start of the document to the prerequisite system and do that. I've done this earlier, so I'll be able to continue straight away here. So I'm going to add an app to my student space. Click on the green plus button up the top and I'm going to choose Upload App. You can either drag and drop or browse. I'm going to browse. So I place this in my Downloads folder. And the app I'm going to load is the SaaS Workshop app. You can optionally put a tag here if you want on the app. So I'm just going to say Workshop. That tag will then appear and be able to be used inside the hub and other functions. For example, you can filter by tag here. Okay, so we now have an app in our space. By default, only people that are able to see your space are the administrators of your tenant and the people you grant access to. To manage access to your space, click on the gear icon to the right of your initials and choose members. So up here, we click the icon and choose members. You can see currently the only person who has access is myself, who's the owner. I click add members and I can search for various people. Now, there are a number of people here in this workshop. It's recommended that you don't give access to people you don't know. If there are colleagues you have, you're welcome to give access to them. But otherwise, we've got this dummy user created so you can safely set up permissions without worrying about anyone. There is actually no one that logs in with this user, so it's safe to add permissions to this user. So I'm going to give dummy user view access to my space. We now see a list of all the members of the space, and if a user is here, such as dummy user, we can optionally change their access directly from here. We could give them edit permissions, for example, in this space, so they could then create apps in this space and work on apps with me. It is possible to change the owner of a space, however, this is an administrative function which isn't covered in this workshop. Now we're going to look at publishing applications to a managed space. Let's go back to our shared space by clicking the back menu and then choosing our space. We just see, as we did before, we have the one workshop we imported, our application. What we're going to do is, so we can publish to a managed space, we're going to make a copy of this application. So click on the three dots in the bottom corner of the app and choose duplicate. After a moment, this creates a copy of the app for us. So now we're going to rename that duplicated app to make it easier to find after we publish it. Again, click the three dot menu and click edit. Change the name to include your user ID. So I'm going to call mine Qlik Students app. You can see it's got the workshop tag that I put there earlier that was brought across when I copied it. I want to take this tag off because I don't want it on my copy. Click Save. Now we want to publish this to the managed space. Again, click the three dots and choose Publish from the menu. Publish menu will give us a list of spaces we're allowed to publish to. In this case, we only have access to one managed space, so it's the only thing that shows up. But if we had access to other ones, we would see a list of all of them. Choose the workshop managed space. Leave the app name as it was. You could optionally change it when you publish if you wish to, but we're not going to do that now. You could also change the description and add a new tag. I'm going to add a tag called Published. Now I click the Publish button and my app will be published to the managed space. Note the app is still in this shared space. It hasn't moved. It is just now available in the managed space. So if I change spaces to that workshop managed space, I can see that my app is here, as well as another student's app, because they've published here. That's why I said it's important to name it, because it's not easy to tell the difference apart from name. We're all working off the same sample app. By the time you do this workshop, there may be a lot of people doing this, so it might actually be difficult to find your app in the list. An easy way to do this is look at this drop down that says Owned by Anyone. Click on that and select Owned by You. You now only will see the apps that you own, which in this case is only one app from me. This concludes our section on spaces. We're now going to have a look at data, files and connections. Let's switch back to our shared space. Now, one thing we haven't looked at yet is the various sections of our space. You can see here we see all types. We can also filter by apps, data and links. If we want to get to the data sources, we click on the gear icon here next to the names of people that have access. And we can click data sources. Now, we don't have any data sources available right now, so we need to add some. Click the Add File button here. Browse to where you downloaded your workshop files. In there you can see we have 3 Excel files. So I'm going to select all 3 of those files and upload them into my SaaS tenant. We can now see these files available in our tenant. If you see next to them there's a 3-dot menu. This gives us the option to duplicate, move or delete a file. We're not going to do that right now. Now let's create a data connection. Scroll down further and click the Add Connection button. We want to create a REST connection, so we're going to scroll down till we find the REST icon, which is here. Enter the URL which you'll find in your workshop materials. Now in this case we don't actually need to set any other parameters really. This is got everything we need, so we can just scroll down to the bottom, click Test Connection, and it works. Now you can either create the connection or create and analyze, which will start building an app directly off it. For now, I'm going to click just create. You can see our connection is here now. So we're going to click the back button to go back to our space. And from here, we're going to click Add New and create a new analytics app. I'm going to call my app My New App and just click Create. This will create a new app and open it straight away. Once your app is open, click on the script editor. This will open our editor to enter our app. Now our app is basically empty at the moment. It just has some standard default settings for things like currency and those things. What we're going to do is add some data to our app. On the right hand side you'll see the data connections. First let's click on the icon in the data file section. I'm going to choose the cars file. Now Qlik Sense automatically analyzes a file and works out there's a table in there. I'm happy with this, so I'm just going to click Insert Script. So I now have a script inserted which will get that cars data into my app. Now I'm going to add some more data from our REST connection. In the REST section, move to where it says Select Data. Now, you won't see the data immediately. It's understood that it's a JSON file, which is what the data coming from is, but we have to tell it where to go. Now, it gives us a list of options, so select Route on the left-hand side here. It now has been able to analyze that root section of the JSON document and has found a table. So we have the data we want. We're happy with this now, so I'll just click Insert Script. Okay. We now have 2 different data sources in our app. Click the Load Data button up the top. It'll take a few moments to read the data from the two sources and load it into the app. You can see it's pulled data from both of our sources and it says it's finished successfully. So we can click close. Next, find the line that says lib connect to. You can see this lists our space name. Click student space and then the connection name. What we wish to do is remove the space name to make this what is called a relative connection. If we have a space name in here, regardless of where our app resides, it will always pull the data from the space named. However, now we've changed this to a relative connection, it will look for a connection of that name in the current space. This is useful when publishing applications, for example from a shared to a managed space, which may have a different version of the data connection in each space. It's a way applications can move through the development lifecycle without having to have the code changed. Let's check that this works. Click Load Data again. It will now try and load our data as before, but using a relative connection. This will make no real difference, but will validate that our script is working. And it is loaded, so we can say close. Now the focus of this workshop isn't really to develop apps, so we're going to leave this app here. It doesn't really do anything, but we've illustrated the use of data connections and data files. Click on the Qlik logo up the top to return to the hub. Now we want to move that app to another space and see what happens. Click the three dots in the bottom corner of the app and choose Move. From the drop-down, choose your personal space. You'll get a warning that the app will no longer be available in Qlik Student Space. That's fine, and it's what we want. You can also choose whether to navigate to that space by default or not, which we want to do. So let's click Move. Let's open our app again. Choose Data Load Editor up the top. So we're back in the Data Load Editor section. Now you'll see two things if we remember. We changed the lib connect line to use a relative space. We did not change the line for our data file though. So let's see what happens when we try to load the data. You can see the first part worked. We were able to load data from our file because it used an absolute path to the space. However, we got an error loading our jokes. The reason is the connection to the jokes is not available in this space. That's to be expected. And normally the way you would do this would be create another connection in this space. Let's close this down. Now we want to create another jokes connection. We can do that straight in the data load editor. So click Create New Connection. Scroll down until we find the rest connection again. Enter the URL. And then test the connection again. Connection works, so let's click Create. Now, the connection is a bit different here. So we need to change the name to match what's in this space. In the workshop material, I called these jokes, which is probably a bit easier, but I didn't do that here. So in the name, let me Save that. And now click load again. And it's worked. So what's happened here is we're pulling the data from the student shared space for the cars file, but we're pulling it from the local space for the REST connection. Okay, close the app now. We're not going to look at these connections anymore. And one thing we want to look at finally in terms of data is the data catalog functionality that's been added to Qlik Sense Enterprise SaaS. In your space, move back to your Qlik student space where the data files are and click on the data tab. We can see our spaces here. We can see our data here. Let's click on the cars file we looked at before. Choose the option Profile Data. The data catalog has analysed our data and tells us some useful information about it. For example, it's giving us some sample values. We know we've got Fords, Chevrolets and Dodges. It's looking at min and max values for relevant columns and tells us how many distinct values there are. This is quite useful in understanding the data when you're building an app to try and determine, for example, what are keys and what fields are nullable, that sort of thing. Close this down. Now, if we wanted to, we could also create an app directly from the data in this file, just from here, without actually doing anything else. This will generate an app for us. We're not going to do this right now, but this would be the same as if we created an empty app and added this file in. This concludes our section on working with data connections. Now we're going to look at collections and favorites. Let's just return to the home area of the hub. At the top of the hub, we see the collections menu. Click that now. We see in the collections area, we see favorites. Now all users have a favorites section, that's automatic, but you can create other collections of your own. If we look at the generated section, these collections are created automatically for us by Qlik Sense. One will show all our apps, our data, etc. You can see that these ones that are green have already been set as collections that are turned on the home screen. If you don't want one of them, you can turn it off, or also you can turn them on. Let's start by turning on the recently created collection by clicking on the little home icon. That will now show on our home screen. Now click home again to return to the home screen in the hub. We now see the recently created section is being shown on the home screen. Let's have another look at favorites now. Let's go back to the collection section. You can see we have a favorite section, but there are no items in it. When we want to have favorites, we add those items into the favorites collection. Click the Explore menu and choose the drop down to pick the linked space. Here we've created two links for you, one to Qlik Community and one to Qlik Help. These are useful links. So click on the little Add to Collection button and we can see we're given the option to add to favorites. So I'll click the plus icon and then Done. I'm going to do the same with Help. Click plus, and you can either click the plus icon here or you can just click favorites here. It does the same thing. And click Done. Now, if I go back to my collections menu, you can see I've got items in my favorites. So if I click on my favorites, I can see those two links. Now let's find the app we added to the managed space. Remember, if you have trouble finding it, you can click Owned by You. I'm going to add this to the favorites as well. And if I go back to collections now, I can see they're showing in my favorites. But not everything you want will be in your favorites. You may want to create a specific collection. So let's do that now. Click on the Create Collection button. I'm going to call my collection based on my name. So the name for my account is Qlik Student. Oops. Okay, and now I'll create my connection. So now I have a second collection, but there's nothing in it. Let's go back to the Explore menu and choose our personal space. We've got two items in here. I'm going to click My New App, and now I have the option of adding it also to the favorites, but also to the Qlik Student connection. Note you can add them both at the same time if you wish to. I'm also going to add the beginner's tutorial to the Qlik Student collection, and also to the favorites. If I go back to my collections menu now, you can see that I've got my student collection has the two apps I added. My favorites has now also got the extra app I added. If I go back to the home page, and scroll down, you can see I have my favorites available, but I don't have my collection. As we did earlier, you can use Customize Your Home if you want to add that in. I'm not going to do that now, but you could do that if you want to see that collection on your home screen. This concludes the exercises on collections. Now we're going to look at sharing and monitoring insights. Firstly, we're going to look at adding charts in the hub. If there's a key visualization we want to see, we can add it to the hub so we see it as soon as we open the hub without even having to open the app. We'll see an up-to-date version of the app when we do this, when it's reloaded. Let's go to your personal space. So click the Explore menu, drop down for Personal, and open the Beginner's Tutorial app. On the Beginning with Basics app, which is the default sheet you see when you open the app, we see a number of charts. Sales per region is a useful chart for people interested in sale, so we're going to add that to the hub. From the three dots menu, click on that and click Monitor in Hub. We then get a preview and we can choose options if we want, such as to store the view state. We're not going to do that. We can add tags. I'm not going to do that either, and I'm just going to say Monitor. Now, it gives us an option to open that. If you're quick enough, if you take too long, that will disappear. Let's click Open. And we can now see that chart is available in the hub. We don't have to open the app to see that chart now. Now, if we hover over it, we can view chart to see more information or view it in the app. I'm just going to click View Chart here. it's loading the chart. This is loading live data. It's not an image. And it's telling you a bit about the app, when it was generated, for example. It tells you the app and the space it's in. When you finish looking at this, click the little X button to close it. Now we're going to look at data alerting. Click the Apps button or the All Types button to go back. We want to open the beginner's tutorial again. So either scroll down and find it here or go to the personal space. I'm going to do it from here. We're going to open the beginning with the basic sheet again. And again, we're going to stick to the sales per region chart. Click the three dots on the sales per region chart and click Create Alert. Give it a title. I'm going to call it Top Sales Regions. And next we need to click Add Measure to add some data. It automatically tells us what's involved in the chart we were looking at, so I'm going to click Sales because that's what we want. Now click Refine Your Data. Choose the drop down and the Show by Dimension. Again, it shows us the dimensions used in that chart. So we're going to pick region because we want the same sort of data as the chart. For selections, we don't want any selections in the app. As it happens, we haven't made any, but we want to be specific. So we're going to say no selections. Scroll down and it gives you a preview of the data that it sees. So it's going to show us the values here, not the chart, which is what we want. Next, then click Next. So our goal is to capture the countries with the most sales relative to other countries. We don't want to see all the data all the time. We only want to see the most important data. So for measure or dimension, click the drop down and click Sales. For the operator, we want greater than, which is selected by default. For compare with, we want to click the drop down and select current set. For the aggregation section, we want to select percentile. And for percentile, enter the value 80. So in other words, we want to see sales for regions that are greater than 80% of the sales overall. That is, we're looking at the top 20% of sales. If we scroll down, we'll now see a preview of that, and we can see only two countries match that, UK and USA. Click Next. Notification frequency lets us know so how often we're sent this alert. Always will not mean it runs all the time. It means it will run every time the app's reloaded. So in other words, every time there's a potential for the data to change. If the app's loaded more often than that, for example, say your app's loaded every half an hour or 15 minutes, you could choose to only have that alert once an hour or once a day or once a week or once a month. It really depends on what your goal is. If it's not something that changes through the month, you don't want to receive this alert every day when the data's, if it's based, say, on a monthly total. So for us, the app isn't being reloaded in our environment anyway, so it doesn't matter. We'll leave it as always. You can optionally share this alert with others. We're not going to do that. So click Create Now. So the alert is created now. We want to return to the hub. From the hub, click on your initials in the top right hand corner. You'll see an alerts menu. Click on that. You can see the alert we created. you'll note it says it has not been evaluated and has not been triggered. What we can do is click the three dot menu and say evaluate now. That will cause Qlik Sense to run through this app and run this alert, and if relevant, we'll fire the alert. Now we see, if we look up the top, that there's a new alert. If we click there, we can see the top sales alert we created has triggered. So if we click on that, it pulls it up and shows us the detail of what's happened. And we can see the values there. This concludes looking at insights in Qlik Sense Enterprise SaaS. It also concludes this workshop run through. I hope you've enjoyed this walkthrough of Qlik Sense Enterprise SaaS. I hope you're enjoying the Cloud Data and Analytics Tour. My name's Lee Kennedy. It's been a pleasure to take you through this today. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Hej och välkomna tillbaka efter den workshopen av Qlik. Hoppas att ni blev inspirerade att jobba med Qlik i molnet. Och nu tänkte vi bara lite kort summera vad vi har dragit igenom här under förmiddagen för er. Och till att börja med så fick vi en presentation av Qlik kring de senaste trenderna inom molnbaserad analys. Vi har också lyssnat på som har pratat om att det krävs flera olika pusselbitar för att få en helhetsbild över sin verksamhet när det kommer till analys inom retail. Vi har också tittat på analys inom retail ur ett processperspektiv. Därtill också lyssnat på 5 av våra kunder och hur de arbetar med Qlik i sin vardag. Och avrundningsvis så hade vi som sagt den här workshopen från Qlik där ni fick en genomgång i Qlik Sense SaaS. Så jag hoppas att ni känner att ni har lärt er något nytt och känner er sugna på att jobba vidare i Qlik i framtiden. Men jag tänkte fråga dig av allt det här som vi har pratat om idag, vad skulle du säga om du skulle välja någonting som du vill att man tar med sig? Har du något speciellt som du vill skicka med till lyssnarna idag?
Ja, alltså, jag tycker att det var väldigt intressant att höra Qliks demo och höra och se Qliks demo av Qlik SaaS och Qlik Cloud. Och även att man fick liksom se hur det faktiskt går praktiskt till att utveckla verktyget. Det är ett väldigt bra verktyg med ett enkelt användargränssnitt som är enkelt att komma igång med och inte egentligen dra med sig särskilt stora kostnader från början. Man behöver ju inte ha någon egen server utan man kör ju på Qlik server med fördel. Så det tycker jag man ska ta med sig. Det är lätt att komma igång och ett riktigt bra verktyg. Och sen vad gäller retail-delarna, jag vet inte om jag behöver skicka med någonting om just retail egentligen. Och jag vill tvärtom kanske skicka med att vi har ju nu grävt idag ganska djupt inom retail och de analyser man gör där för att stödja processerna och det man vill utveckla. Excitec har ju såklart väldigt många andra kunder i väldigt många andra branscher och retail var ju bara ett exempel på hur Qlik kan stödja en verksamhet och Qlik skulle naturligtvis lika bra kunna stödja processerna inom till exempel gaming eller bank och finans.
Ja men precis, jag nämnde ju tidigt här i början av eventet när vi pratade om Excitec att vi har över 1000 kunder i Sverige och det är ju långt ifrån att alla de 1000 jobbar inom retail. Så det är klart att Qlik finns ju att använda inom många olika branscher. Så det var egentligen allt som vi hade idag. Men vi har ju också haft chatten öppen hela förmiddagen. Och vi tänkte att vi ska ta en titt i om vi har fått några frågor där som inte har blivit besvarade. Så fångar vi upp dem nu innan vi avslutar för dagen. Så vi går helt enkelt över till lite frågor och svar. Ja, då ska vi kika lite på frågor som har kommit in under dagen. Jag kan också se att de flesta har besvarats ganska löpande av mina kollegor. Men det var här en fråga som kom in ganska sent, eller nyligen, som inte ser ut att ha fått något svar än. Så jag tänkte att vi fångar upp den, så får du svara på den här, Unn. Och den frågan är, finns det en färdig app för nya kunder som riktar sig specifikt till retail?
Ja, som de bara kan installera då kanske?
Ja, men jag tolkar det som det. Ja. Precis. Har du något svar på den frågan?
Det är en jättebra fråga, för jag tänkte själv när jag började som konsult och kom från retail, så tänkte jag att jag kommer ju ha facit. Efter ett år som konsult då kommer jag veta precis hur man gör den bästa retail-appen. Men tyvärr efter snart 5 år så har jag fortfarande inte skapat upp den perfekta retail-appen som bara att plug and play. För att även om, som ni ser, det är väldigt mycket likheter mellan kunder i branschen, så är det också väldigt mycket olikheter. Och ni som kunder ni har samma grundproblem, men ni vill lösa det på lite olika sätt, och ni har lite olika förutsättningar, för ni jobbar med lite olika affärssystem och ni har lite olika sätt att jobba med processen ändå jämfört med varandra. Så att på ett sätt är svaret nej, det finns ingen färdig app, men på ett sätt är svaret ja, för det finns extremt mycket erfarenhet inom Excitec som företag. Vi har väldigt mycket olika kundlösningar som rör sig inom samma område, som vi hämtar såklart kunskap ifrån, inspiration ifrån, och som går därför relativt fort att faktiskt få upp en riktigt bra lösning för nya kunder. Så att svaret är nej, men jag tycker ändå att vi drar väldigt mycket nytta av den kunskapen vi har på ett bra sätt.
Jag håller med. Jag skulle säga att det är en av de stora styrkorna med att vi har en väldigt bred kundbas. Att vi har stor kompetens inom olika områden och kan plocka och ta från många olika lösningar för att individanpassa för olika nya kunder. Superkul! Och med det så tror jag att vi faktiskt avrundar för dagen. Jag tänker vi stänger ner den här. Och här har ni våra uppgifter i bild. Så skulle ni komma på några frågor i efterhand, så går det alltid att höra av sig till mig eller Unn eller någon av våra andra kollegor för den delen. Ni kommer också få en inspelning av det här eventet i efterhand, så att ni kan titta på det igen, och skulle det som sagt vara några funderingar så går det jättebra att kontakta oss. Och med det sagt så skulle vi också vilja passa på att önska er en glad sommar, och vi hänger kvar i chatten i ett par minuter till. Så har ni några frågor eller någon feedback på dagens event, så tar vi jättegärna emot det. Så tackar vi för oss.
Tack!